This story occurred when I was 15, back in the 70s. That's a long time ago and makes me an old man, but this chilling nightmare still haunts me as if it were yesterday. I tell it with the same warning to young travelers. The world isn't all kind, so always be aware of your surroundings in unfamiliar parts of the world. My family went on a Caribbean holiday over Christmas my freshman year of high school. It was a dream vacation planned by my father and his brother. It was their dream of white sand beaches, snorkeling, deep sea fishing, and laying on the warm beaches suntanning while everyone else back in New York froze. We went to St. Bart's for its beaches, lagoons, and inlets, famous for their natural beauty. There's a huge undersea nature reserve that protects the shallow coral reefs that surround the island, and is considered the best snorkeling in the world. Even a sunken boat can be snorkeled, which is super cool. So it was my dad, mom, brother, uncle and aunt, and cousin Rodney. Altogether, there were 7 of us. None of us except my dad had ever been outside the country before, so we were all super excited. We arrived at St. Bart's after flying from New York to St. Martin and taking a puddle jumper to St. Bart's. We were met at the airport by a jeep that took us to our hotel resort. We had a small villa for the 2 families to be together. It sat on the beach with nothing between us and the surf but pure white beach. This resort had been voted the best on St. Bart's for skin diving for the reef attracted colorful fish. I was stunned by the sheer beauty of the location. Everything was lush and green behind us, and this incredible blue was before us. The water was 75 degrees, and my cousin, brother, and I dove into the water first thing. We were laughing, body surfing the waves, and having the best time when we heard a sound like helicopter blades spinning. "That's weird," Rodney said. "How on earth would a helicopter be able to land in that jungle?" It sounded like it came from a peninsula down the beach from our villa, but it wasn't like a helicopter either, as it sputtered and was silent and sputtered again. The 3 of us looked at each other and said, "Is that an AK-47 or something?" Rodney shifted in the water uncomfortably and said, "Don't think about it. Probably some guy's target practicing." And since Rodney was 2 years older, we listened to him and returned to our games in the water. But I couldn't get the noise out of my head. It really sounded like an assault rifle, the type a military would use, not something that a couple of guys would use for target practice. The sound was still coming in a sporadic burst that lasted for a while, then completely stopped. We went back to swimming and diving for shells and ended up on the deck of our villa lounging in the sun. It was a great day. The following day, we took the sea kayaks offered by the resort and paddled out past the reef. It was easier paddling out there as the surf broke after the reefs. Being 3 adventurous boys, we paddled down the reef and around the peninsula to explore the shore beyond the resort. We paddled for about 25 minutes, and all 3 of us were exhausted. Rodney was yelling over to me to stop. He couldn't go any further. He's not only 2 years older, but considerably heavier and out of shape. He pointed to a small beach that was kinda hidden between some massive boulder rocks and said, "Let's go there and swim and rest." I looked at his face and saw he was beaten red from exhaustion, so it was probably a good idea to go ashore. It took all our strength to pull our kayaks up just enough to keep them from floating off. Our arms were beaten from paddling, and we had no strength. We all noticed that the beach was obviously private, with just a few lounges on the beach and a stairway of stone leading up the cliff to a house that hung over the edge, facing out to the sea with big glass windows. As we looked up, admiring the house, a man stood up from a couch and walked out of sight. And when he returned, he was accompanied by 7 other men. They stood in the center of the room in full view of the beach, and it looked like they were arguing. They then passed something around. I couldn't see what it was, but it could have been a drug deal. Suddenly they all stopped and turned and faced out the window. Rodney said, "Hey guys, I think they're looking at us." The man who we saw first then came out onto the balcony. I was sure he would yell at us, "This is a private beach, get out of here." But instead, he yelled in a kindly voice, "Hey you boys, why don't you come on up and let's have a talk?" Rodney said without moving his lips, "Move back slowly, get in the kayaks and paddle as hard as possible. Don't look back, just paddle as fast as you can around that giant boulder we passed coming in." As we pulled our kayaks into the water and jumped in, the man from the house and 2 other men ran down the stone staircase to the beach. We paddled around the boulder until we were well past the reef. We had the current with us, so we returned to the resort in record time, putting the kayaks back on the rack and hiding in the villa. Did we witness a drug deal or just a couple of friends meeting at a seaside villa? We think it was a drug deal because of the previous day's gunfire. My gut tells me if we had gone up to that house, it may have been the last thing we would have done. Our bodies probably would have disappeared in the jungle. This happened a few years ago, when the Marine Corps was still training women-only recruits at Parris Island. Now it's integrated in San Diego. I was a recruit out of high school. I had just completed my basic training in preparation for deployment in the Middle East. When basic was completed, I was issued a 4-day pass to go home and visit family and friends. But I was from a dysfunctional family, and there really wasn't any home to go back to celebrate or say goodbye to. So I decided to go to the beach on Hilton Head, which is only about an hour away from Parris Island. I just wanted to relax on the beach and let my sore muscles recover from training night and day. I certainly felt in shape and thought I looked great in a bikini. Every girl should do basic after high school. What a great way to kickstart into adulting. I looked great and had a direction to follow. I rented an Airbnb room right on the beach. It was more affordable than you may think, and I had saved my pay as there was little to spend during training. It was a hot morning, so I grabbed my beach towel, and the Airbnb gave me a big beach umbrella to read my book under while enjoying the ocean breeze. I was lying on my towel and reading for about an hour when this guy walked up to my umbrella and asked if he could leave his clothes near me and if I didn't mind watching them while I went swimming. Something about a watch and wallet he was worried about leaving unattended in the middle of the beach. He had a bunch of skull tattoos and bleeding hearts with daggers in them, but that didn't bother me. Again, I just left a Marine base. It's not uncommon there. I said sure, not a problem, and he splashes into the ocean and dives into the water for about 20 minutes. When he comes back, he spreads his towel next to me and lies down, chatting in with me as if we're old friends. I really just wanted to be left alone and read my book, but he seemed harmless, and I didn't want to come off as some rude girl. So I spoke with him for a few minutes, and he said his name was Juan, and that he lived about a half hour off the island in Bluffton on the mainland. He rattled on how he would have joined the Marines but spent some time in prison. I didn't ask for what, but he went on to tell his story that it was some kind of disagreement, and this disagreement landed him 6 years. I attempted to draw his attention to the fishing boats off the beach and away from his personal history, but he was dead focused on himself, and why am I here alone? This is when things start to get really menacing. He keeps asking every few minutes, "You don't have anybody with you? You're here all alone? You're really by yourself?" He keeps repeating this more to himself than asking me the questions. Warning lights start flashing in my head. I started telling him I was leaving that day and had to return to base. I wish I had said to him that I was expecting friends to join me when he first came up, or that my boyfriend was working on his computer or something in the room. The only positive thing was that the beach became increasingly busy with families and people walking. He ignores the crowd and whatever I said, and continues to press me for where I'm staying. I've been in awkward and scary situations before, but never like this in the middle of the day with people all around. This, in some strange way, made this guy very dangerous. He then gets closer and says that I should attend a party tonight. I can meet all his friends. "Where are you staying? I'll pick you up." I tell him again that I'm heading back to Paris to join my unit. That's totally untrue, but I must create some story to get rid of him. He doesn't flinch and says, "Are you here alone?" I know it's weird that I didn't just get up and leave, but this guy was scaring me so badly. I was sure he would follow me back to my Airbnb, and I definitely did not want him to know where I was staying. I wanted to get out of this situation without angering him. I could see if I said something wrong or stepped in the wrong direction, he could go off like a landmine. After inviting me to the party, he gets even more ominous. He looks at my figure and says, "I'll bet you're in good shape and can run for miles." This came out of the blue, which was devastatingly frightening. We had not discussed at any point physical fitness or my military training. I look off to my left and see a family walking our way down the beach. So I stood up and gathered my things, leaving the umbrella and said I have to go to the restroom, so see you later, and walked next to the family up the beach to the wharf, where the public restrooms were and an ice cream bar, which is in the opposite direction as my Airbnb. He pursued me at a short distance behind, looking like he was just walking on the beach, throwing a few stones into the surf. Once I reached the restrooms, I went in the one door, scooted out the back door, and disappeared into the parking lot, doubling my way back to the Airbnb on a path hidden by dunes and buildings. I'm happy the wharf was packed with families with kids running around to provide a distraction for me to lose this chilling nightmare and escape unharmed. My name is Victoria, but my friends call me Vicky. I'm a student at the University of Florida in Gainesville. I'm an engineering major. Several of my classmates and I rented an apartment on Siesta Key Beach for spring break. It's world-renowned for its talcum powder white sand. We found a place at Crystal Sands Condos on Airbnb, where all 6 of us could sleep and cook a little on our own, to save the cost of going to the restaurants every night. We would cook dinner, go to the bars to dance, and have drinks in the evenings. During the days, we would oil up and sunbathe on the white sand. It's doubtful if we would actually swim in the water, even though it's a gorgeous blue. It's just that there are things in there like man-of-war jellyfish and sharks and stuff like that will eat you. I know that sounds like we're girly and fearful, but we aren't. We all have grown up in big cities and can handle ourselves. Stranger danger was taught to us at an early age, so we aren't afraid of the night either. We just know how to be watchful. Well, spring break began on Saturday, March 4th this year, and we had the condo that night. It's a 3-hour drive from Gainesville to Siesta Key. Everyone had things to do in the morning, so we started late. We arrived at sunset, which is awesome from Siesta Key, and we looked for the green flash just as the sun dropped below the Gulf of Mexico's horizon, but none of us saw it. Maybe we just didn't know what we were looking for. We settled in and began cooking and playing music, being silly dancing on the balcony. Everyone was getting stoked to go night clubbing, but I was a little tired from the week at school and said to go without me. I'm just gonna relax and take a run on the beach tonight. Go have fun. I'll go with you all tomorrow, I promise. The other girls didn't like that. 1, I wasn't going with them, and 2, they were wary of me running on the beach alone after dark. After dinner and everyone left for the clubs, I put on my running shorts and headed to the beach. The beach after dark takes on a whole different feel. The atmosphere with the waves seems louder, with the tide out much further from the condos and houses that line the beach. The sand doesn't radiate that warmth it does in the day. It's a much colder feeling and squishy under my bare feet. I always get a little bit worried when running by myself at night. This is mainly a result of constant warnings from Mom, and tonight even more exasperated by the wary attitude of my friends. Don't go, Vicky. When it gets dark, bad things happen. I'm safe and I know I can take care of myself, but their overprotectiveness is unsettling and gets me a bit spooked. I started to run, and everything was going great. The moon was up, and the waves were curling and crashing on the beach in a magical rhythmical sound, spattering the moonlight into sparkles on the beach. I was relaxing and breathing in the ocean air. I was getting lost in my own thoughts that fed my soul. I stumbled on a driftwood log in the darkness and fell to my knees in the sand. I wasn't hurt, just a bit startled, but when I looked around I realized that I had gone farther than I had intended, and was on a part of the beach I was unfamiliar with. The big condo buildings were behind me, and mostly tightly packed houses lined the shore. As I got back onto my feet, I saw a dark shadowy figure running up the beach behind me. As I continued running, I could feel the person was keeping pace with me. I picked up my pace, and the shadow picked up his pace. My heart was beginning to beat in my chest. I had no idea who was chasing me and didn't want to find out. I sprinted as fast as I could 50 yards down the beach. I looked over my shoulder and could see the figure gaining on me. The only thing I could think to do was to run to the nearest house with lights on and hope someone was home. The figure was so close behind me when I pounded on the door of a house and screamed for help. Fortunately, someone heard my cries and immediately opened the door. I literally fell into the house, panting. Looking up, I saw the kindly yet confused face of an elderly woman, who bolted the door and asked if I was in danger. I was so shaken that I could hardly form the word yes. She said, "You're safe," as she glanced at the window facing the Gulf directly behind me. At that second, she froze, her hand clasping her chest. I spun my head around, and a man in a black hoodie was staring into the room. Pure horror swallowed me as I met his eyes that locked onto me like a vice grip. He then reached out with his finger, pointed at me. I about dropped dead. He then scrawled on the sea-salted window with his finger, "You're fast, but not as fast as me. See you again." He then disappeared. The homeowner called the police. When they arrived and checked the beach, all evidence of the dark runner had been wiped away by the rising tide. I never went running on the beach at night again, but when I close my eyes, I still see that chilling nightmare chasing me. When I was 7, my family went on vacation to Carolina Beach. We've done this every summer that I can remember. We live in Chapel Hill, so it's about a 3-hour drive, give or take. But it was when I was 7 that this dreadful story took place. I have an older brother who's 12 and an older sister who's 10. I'm the youngest, so when they're off doing their own thing, I'm pretty much stuck with Mom. On the day of this story, my brother and sister were off with Dad, probably at the beach, and I was with my mom at the pool. It was really crowded. The hotel has a pretty cool pool with slides and a play area where I played mostly by myself, but a little with some other kids. It had a gate with a long boardwalk over the dune to the beach with a little sitting spot with a cover over it to watch the beach and stay out of the sun. Well, I'd been running around the pool and doing cannonballs and swimming underwater and playing tag with the other kids when I looked up. Mom wasn't on the lounge chair where she was supposed to be. I check on her often as I like her to see each cannonball and count how many seconds I can stay underwater. So when I looked and she wasn't there, I got really worried. I got out of the pool and walked around, and there were lots of people, but I could not find my mom. I scanned all the chairs and checked by the snack bar because she sometimes gets me things for rest period, but I couldn't find her. She must have gone to the beach to talk with my dad, or something popped into my head, and that seemed reasonable to a 7-year-old. So I went up the boardwalk to the sitting place, stood on the bench, and looked down the beach for her. There were a ton of people on the beach, and way down the beach I saw my mother's swimsuit. So I hopped off the bench and ran down the beach in that direction. I ran until I was so tired. Very few people were on this stretch of beach, and I looked around and tried to find my mom. I became frightened and thought I would never ever see my mom again. I sat down on the sand and cried. Then this woman and man approached me and asked if I was lost and if my family was nearby. I told them I was alone and was looking for my mother. They said they had seen my mother and told me to take their hand and we would go to her. We started walking further down the beach for 15 minutes and were far from the hotel. More houses, not hotels, existed on this part of the beach. They kept saying your mom is down on the other side of the beach and will take care of you. The man said, let's build a sandcastle. I said no, and the woman said, you must be hungry. Let's go get something to eat. What do you say? They kept saying that mom was busy and they would take me back to her after a while. I kept saying I just wanted to go back to the hotel and check for my mother there. They both got angry at me at this point and said we're going to go get something to eat at our house, and we'll take you by car back to the hotel after. I got really angry then, and shouted that I didn't want to go with them to their house. I was going to walk back to the hotel by myself. At that moment I heard my name being called from where we had walked. It was a group of lifeguards from the hotel pool. I recognized them from the t-shirts and red swimsuits they were wearing. I took off running towards them as fast as I could run in the sand. When I ran to them, I shouted, I'm here, I'm here. The girl guard said a lot of people are looking for you. I said that man and woman kept taking me away and turned to point at them, but when I turned, they were gone. The lifeguards called back to the hotel and told them I had been found and would be back shortly, and please inform the parents. Back at the hotel, I told my mom and dad what had happened, and my dad informed the hotel manager. As it turned out, another 7-year-old staying at another hotel the week before had also experienced the same ordeal. The police had been informed and were on the lookout for a couple matching our descriptions, but had yet to arrest anyone.